I wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast talking about what we wish we knew when we were diagnosed with premature ovarian insufficiency or failure. So talking to another person who is on the same journey as myself, who has POI, similar to me. And as you may know, we support couples that have POI or POF, so premature ovarian insufficiency or failure, either get pregnant naturally or improve their chances of pregnancy success with their own eggs. So this episode is really a peek into, some hard lessons learned. So really you don't have to struggle like we did. So excited for you to listen. Hey everyone, excited to announce that Get Pregnant Naturally is now turning into a daily show. So we're still going to have our Monday show where we're going to have a deeper dive with functional medicine experts, natural fertility experts, mind-body experts, really interviewing the very best so that you can have the tools you need to help you improve your chances of pregnancy success with your own eggs. And now from Tuesday to Friday, we are going to be turning our show into a Q&A show. So we are taking your questions. This is called Ask the Fertility Experts. I'm going to be recording the answers to your questions with a member of my team. So Dr. Tabitha Barber, she's triple board certified in obstetrics, gynecology, menopause, and functional medicine. We are taking your questions live on the show here. So if you've got a question, all you need to do is go to Fab Fertile Inc. That's my Instagram, Fab Fertile Inc. Instagram. Send me a DM, send me your question. Dr. Tabitha and I will answer your question live here on the podcast. We can either, use your name, your first name, or you can just have an anonymous question. You just let me know. And so excited to really give you benefits of having a set of eyes here on your questions so that you can improve your chances of pregnancy success. And take care. I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 4 spots available per month to work with us. I would like to invite you and your partner to a Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery Call. And this call is for you if you meet at least one of these criteria. You've been trying to get pregnant for at least 2 years. You've been through at least one failed IUI or IVF. This calls for action takers. If you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. If you're seriously considering working with us, go to Fab Fertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. That's Fab Fertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. There's a lot of information about which supplements are right for fertility. And like most couples I speak with, you are probably taking a lot of supplements. But are these supplements optimizing or harming your fertility? That's why we recommend professional grade supplements without harmful dyes, fillers, or top allergens so that you can prepare your body in the best way for pregnancy. And as you may know, we take a functional approach to fertility. And while supplements are included in your customized protocols, which are based on testing, they are only part of the equation because there's no pill you can take that will out-supplement the basics, such as poor diet, dysregulated sleep, either moving too much or not enough, and not dealing with chronic stress. So we do recommend basic supplements for both men and women. And these are essential starters that you need to have right now to optimize your preconception health. And I'm excited to offer you a special discount at our Fab Fertile store. You'll receive 15% discount on our professional grade supplements. So simply go to Fab Fertile Store. That's F-A-B fertilestore.com to access the basic supplements so that you can prepare your body for pregnancy success without wasting time and money on supplements that may not be right for you. Go to Fab Fertile Store, that's fabfertilestore.com, and save 15% on your order. Hey there. Thanks so much for listening to the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast. And I've got a favor to ask you. If you are enjoying learning about the functional approach to fertility, consider going to iTunes and rating and reviewing the podcast. This is how it helps the show reach more people that are struggling with infertility, knowing that there's another approach that really can get to the bottom of why it's not working in the first place. So all you need to do is, if you're on the app or the desktop, just go in and consider leaving a 5-star rating and leave a review. And there is step-by-step instructions in the show notes showing you exactly how to do that. So if you can just take a few minutes, just take the few minutes right now. You can pause this recording, come back, leave the review. It would really mean the world to me and help others that are on the fertility journey as well. Take care. I didn't need to go to donor eggs. Obviously, I don't regret it. I have beautiful children. I could have done things differently, restored. I was still cycling back in my 20s. I could have looked at my health, the environmental toxins, the stress I was under.
Many, many women are being told their eggs are too old. That's often merely an assumption that's not based on actual evidence. The reason being that there is no direct test of egg quality. You can't test egg quality.
It's the man who's got a food sensitivity or he has a zinc deficiency.
Like there can be a root cause to these symptoms that are, quote unquote, period problems, that the doctor will pass you a pill without any question of why.
And some part of you knows that if you can reframe your journey from not one of struggle, or if it is struggle, learn how to embrace the struggle. Learn how to embrace it.
Most conditions in the child occur during the 9 months of development. It's the genetic switches are turned on or turned off, and they're pre-programmed. So you are in such a powerful, amazing position to do amazing things for your kids.
Why is IVF the first step? Because we believe it should be the last step. Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby. Hey there, I'm Sarah Clark, founder of Fab Fertile and your host. I believe the functional approach is the first step for anyone struggling with infertility, and my aim is to help you get pregnant naturally. Today, I'm welcoming Vicki Clifford to the podcast, and we're digging into what we wish we knew when we were diagnosed with POI or POF, so premature ovarian insufficiency or failure. Vicki lives in Perth, Australia, and was diagnosed with POI and POF at the age of 32 in 2007, after being on birth control pills for 10 years. After 3 years of trying to get her cycle back, she moved on to donor eggs and had her first child in 2012 and her second in 2016. Thanks so much for listening. I'm so thankful that you're here. Make sure you hit subscribe. And if you know someone else who is on the fertility journey, please share this podcast with them. Hey, Vicki, excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited too.
Yeah. So if you could share your journey with us and really how you came to do this work.
Well, it came with my own personal journey back in 2006. Feels like a lifetime ago. I went off the pill to start a family. My husband and I had been together for 10 years and, married for about five or six. I thought I would just go off the pill and then the next month I'd be pregnant, right? Mm-hmm. And, I thought all I needed to do to have a healthy pregnancy was jump on Elevate, don't judge me, and then I would have this, natural pregnancy and, have a family that way, no problems. Anyway, so fast forward to about March 2007 and my period still hadn't returned. And so my GP referred me to a gynecologist to have some testing done. After the results came back, she got me into the office, sat me down and told me that I had early menopause, and I was absolutely floored, gobsmacked, like just didn't even cross my mind that would be the issue for my periods not returning, and obviously not having fallen pregnant during that time. And in that same conversation, she said, "Oh, do you have any sisters or, female cousins that could donate their eggs to you?" And my head was spinning and I was just absolutely traumatized. So it took a bit of time to process all of that. And, going down the donor egg route just wasn't, something that I wanted to do straight up. And I did firmly believe that I could get my body back on track. I had really, normal cycle up until going on the pill. There was never any issues. And so I just really believed that I could get my cycle back. I tried all sorts of things for 3 years. And, this is all pre-social media and podcasts and all the information that we readily have available on the internet now. There was nothing about premature menopause, or back then, it was called ovarian failure, but there was nothing about ovarian insufficiency that I could find. And now, doing a lot of research, I can find the studies that happened, predating my diagnosis in 2007 that talks about premature ovarian insufficiency and how it correlates to certain issues happening in the body, that it's actually a symptom of an underlying condition, whereas I was always led to believe that, that was like POI, POF was the condition.
Yeah.
Anyway, so 3 years of trying all the things that I could personally find. And, we're talking integrative doctors and naturopaths and herbal medicine, hypnotherapy, Bowen therapy, acupuncture, all the things, and just so much time and money and stress involved. And in 2010, because during that time, I'd gone on a donor egg wait list, because obviously, it's not, especially in Perth, it's not easily come by via the clinics that, there's eggs to use. So one of the clinic lists that I was on, some eggs became available. I thought, well, I've given it a really red hot shot. I'll go down the donor egg path. So that's kind of when the donor egg journey started, was in 2010, and it wasn't until 2011 that I had a successful pregnancy. So so there was some miscarriages in the mix, and we ended up actually finding a known donor, so someone that actually put out an advertisement on a local web page, and because we were all set to go to South Africa, and I was in this donor egg group, and one of the donors said to me, if I wasn't donating to this person, I would absolutely donate to you. Please put up an ad. I didn't find someone through that avenue, but I did find it gave me the courage to kind of put myself out there on another platform. Our donor found us through there, which was amazing, and had some miscarriages through that, and then had a successful pregnancy 2011, which resulted in my very feisty, now 9-year-old girl in May 2012. And then we tried again for our and I think in the back of my mind I thought, I'll have this successful pregnancy, baby, and then my body will just kick back in. And I was still kind of working on my health, and had that in the back of my mind that would happen, and it didn't. So in 2014 we tried again for our second, and we had a couple of embryos from that first cycle. They didn't eventuate, so our amazing donor did a whole other cycle for us. Yeah. And then, we had some other issues after that one. And then finally in late 2015, after a hysteroscopy and a scratch, because I'd never had any issues with implantation before. And now that we'd gone another few cycles in, my fertility doc said, well, maybe we'll give this a go. And so that was the winning ticket on that one, and that resulted in my now he's going to be 5 in a couple of weeks, my now 5-year-old boy. So a long journey, a very emotionally draining journey and financially draining journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And how old were you in 26 when you were diagnosed then? Yeah,
so I was 32. So not long after turning 33. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then, so how did you make your path forward to doing what you do?
Yeah. So, it took a long time for me to actually realize that the path that I guess my turning my purpose out of my pain was to do the fertility work. So I've been helping people another way in understanding, what chemicals are doing in their households and what that's doing on their cycles and their fertility and their kids' health. So I was kind of tiptoeing around it a little bit. And then when COVID happened, it really just shook up my whole career, made me realize that helping women that are going through what I've been through is really where I'm destined.
And so what does that look like now, I guess, for you? So
so I did Kayla Smith's hormone puzzle method certification.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm now a certified holistic hormone and fertility coach. Mm-hmm. And her method is everything that I wanted to have had back then, and someone to walk alongside me and really, be my sounding board when, your friends, as sympathetic as they can be, they don't really understand, what you're going through. Family don't understand, your husbands have, an insight, but still it's not their body that is experiencing what you're experiencing. To have a coach, I don't even know if it was a thing back then, probably not. I'd never heard of it anyway. I think it just would have been, such a healing and comforting support person.
Great. Yeah. Kayla's been on the podcast. I know Kayla. So we had an episode we talked about fertility superfoods. Definitely go check that episode out if you wanted to learn more about that. She's great. Yeah. And I guess I'll just kind of chip in here on my journey too. So obviously thank you for sharing that with us, because and you've probably shared that, many, many times as well. It's not that we like sharing our story over and over again. It's you sort of want to have people hear some nuggets or hear something for them that you don't need to struggle like we did, because mine was it was a sort of a similar kind of thing where I was diagnosed with premature ovarian insufficiency or failure at 28, went into my OBGYN, and, she said, sorry, you'll never have your own biological children. Here's the brochure to the clinic. Off you go. I didn't get a second opinion. I went straight into freaking action, because I was like, the only time I cried about this was when I said to my husband, I'm like, I want to get a dog. And he's like, I don't want the responsibility of a dog. I'm like, I want a dog. And then he's like, then I started bawling. But I wasn't dealing with my grief. I was just like, let's just go into action, Sarah. Yeah. So then we got on a list for a donor egg, and we were lucky, on the first fresh transfer, to have our daughter. So
amazing.
It's wait, I select donor eggs, and then it's a done deal when it's
that's what I thought.
Yeah. It's still a 50% chance of it working. So,
absolutely.
It's interesting with that sort of piece. And then, my daughter's about to turn 20. So this is the same with you where,
oh, wow.
Yeah. Where you're in the chat groups and the forums, and basically it's your bones will disintegrate. You'll get heart disease and you've got POI and it's game over. And there's a 1 to 5% chance of you ever getting pregnant naturally, and don't even bother.
Yeah. Here's a prescription for HRT. Have a nice life.
Yeah. Take your HRT like an old lady at 28. And so I did all that.
Same.
Yeah.
I walked out there with a script and then went to the chemist, my head absolutely spinning. And you can just see the look of horror on the pharmacist's face that he's giving a HRT drugs to, an early 30, healthy looking woman. Yeah. I mean, it just still makes me shake my head. And the thing that going through all the IVF stuff was still not appreciating that underlying condition. And that was also contributing to all the miscarriages and the failures of implantation. And so that's what, I try to express to people as well going through this is don't just think that, like you've just said, going on getting donor eggs is a given, and that there's those other issues that can go alongside that journey can be, possibly related to why the POF has happened in the first place, and also in postpartum periods as well, because I had a lot of postpartum issues, which I now that I know what I know about inflammation, poor gut health, autoimmune issues, those issues definitely can correlate to all of that stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for me, I had, my daughter, and then it was 3 years later with a different donor, I had my son. And like you're talking about with the postpartum, where it was my milk dried up at 4 months. I looked at I didn't even realize my child wasn't even gaining weight. Obviously she was getting checked, and then she went for her 4-month checkup, and they're like, what is happening here? And so I had to add in bottle at that stage. And I breastfed for 6 months, and then, and I just was super irritable and cranky. And it was a tough period of time. Again, I'm not a big crier, so I wasn't crying. My stress comes out usually in the form of anger, and I'm usually trying to fix something like a crazy person.
Yeah. Hello, type A.
Yeah, something going on there. And then years later, I worked through all of that with coaches and, into the spiritual side of things and, exploring my auras and my chakras and all the rest of it, which has been very, there's so much peace in looking at that stuff. And I thought, meditating and still in times of stress, the thing I let go of is the meditation and exploring the spiritual.
All the stuff you need. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's interesting. Why am I feeling ungrounded? Oh, because I haven't done that stuff. And there's a little pattern, but you start to be able to call yourself out on your own crap, especially having someone to support you. Yeah. And then, that's why I similar to you, want, when you discover the functional side of things and, like functional medicine and, there's underlying issues and, my health took a nosedive. Let's talk about, so how was your health before you were diagnosed with POI or POF? What was happening?
Oh, well, I thought I was perfectly healthy. Not long after, not much before going off the pill and, having this, baby the next month is what I thought it would happen. I had been, living on a diet of, low fat foods and frozen meals. I'd done a particular exercise program and they were all about, this food has that points and this food has that points. Well, yes. Hello, then not a very healthy diet, not a healthy whole food nutrition. I still felt okay. And I was, I was into size 10 clothes and I was exercising and I thought that meant healthy, but little did I know that inside, that's when the inflammation must have been getting out of control. Obviously being on the pill for 10 odd years, I had no idea how that was robbing my body of essential vitamins and minerals and just annihilating my gut. And look, not everyone has that result when being on the pill, but that was my situation for sure. I'm still working on healing my gut. There's a lot, that holistic health that you kind of have to take a look at. And I definitely wasn't even remotely on my radar. It was all about what the scales were telling me and what my clothes were telling me. Yeah, just clueless, absolutely clueless.
Yeah, it's interesting for me. So I went on the pill in my early 20s after I had irregular cycles and I had acne, like when I had great skin in my teens and I started getting acne in my early 20s. And then I had a fungal rash on my chest and all these sort of different weird health issues going on. And then I, was put on the pill. So it was for the cycles. It wasn't for prevention. And many people that I speak with, when I ask that question, was it prevention or was it for something else? Many times they tell me, PMS, heavy cycles, irregular cycles, something going on. What was that the case for you while you went on or?
No, it was purely prevention. Purely for prevention. I had no problems with my cycles prior. It was pretty much 28 days on the dot, no heavy bleeding, really mild cramping. Life continued as normal. And I got my first period, I think I was just shy of 13. So all completely normal. There's no family history of any menstrual issues. Yeah. But my grandmother is a celiac. Oh. So I think that is where a lot of my inflammation comes from, is the gluten sensitivity. Mm-hmm. And I've just undertaken some food sensitivity tests, which I'm just waiting on the results back from that, which test like 144 foods, just to really start to dive deep on it, because I'm still not where I think that I should be after, a good, 3 years of that whole food nutrition. And, so there's still a lot of gut healing to happen. So I just want to see what the little triggers are, because obviously there's something that, my gut's not happy about, that I'm continuing to eat. I have a suspicion that it's almonds, because I've eliminated gluten and dairy, and I've got a suspicion it's some nuts. So we'll see what else comes up.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I've been dairy and gluten free and corn free for 10 years. When I first started doing this, I was like, ooh, I love desserts. I'm going to do some baking with a lot of almond flour. I'm going to be having almond milk smoothies. Oh, almond butter. This is great. And, the body's not meant to digest that quantity of nuts. And then I had some almond ice cream, and I'm like, half an hour later, I'm vomiting. I'm like, what the freak is going on? And then I tested it again, and now I developed such a severe almond sensitivity.
Because you overdosed on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so,
that's where I think I'm at.
Yeah, so I was really ticked off. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, because that's one of the main substitutes for for some gluten-free options. It's like a whole nut party, and then with all the cashews and the rest of it, and it's like the body's not meant to digest that amount of things, and it's important to be able to. It's supposed to, this is in the perfect world where every 3 to 4 days you're going to alternate your foods. And many of us are like, same smoothie every day, same, whatever. We're in a routine. So, and that's how those food sensitivities develop. And we see that all the time with POI. So premature ovarian insufficiency or failure, the non-celiac gluten sensitivity, like off the chart. And then there's the cross reactors that, we see on that. So food sensitivities are such a huge thing, but so you didn't discover that until, when did you discover the food sensitivity thing for you? Was that, I discovered all this later. It was like, what? Later. I thought, I was a fairly intelligent, knowledgeable person. And I'm like, nope, didn't discover this until way past, like I was 40. So
only really a couple of years ago. I mean, I kind of danced around the whole gluten-free thing, but because I didn't have any physical reaction, I'd go back on it and, I'd still feel okay. And then when I realized, well, hang on, I haven't actually given my body enough time to really get over that reaction for my body to be able to then, if I did have it again, to my body to say, hang on a minute, we're not happy about this. Like, this really isn't good for you. There was still that desensitization that I had with, even dairy, like, for a period of time, I'd go off dairy for a little while and then I'd go back on it and I'd be like, oh, I feel fine. I'm fine. But then I had, a good 12 months of being really strict, like no gluten, no dairy. That if I have it now, like I am in a world of pain. So that's how long it's really taken for my body to be able to, when I do get those bits of it, that my body says, nope, this is not what you should be having.
Yeah, because many people are like, oh, I've gone gluten-free and dairy-free and I took it out and actually I don't feel any different. And sometimes maybe the body's not even mounting an immune response. You don't know there's hidden inflammation because you've got a diagnosis going on. It's, our whole thing is to how do you reduce inflammation in the body and get you into that, out of that fight or flight to that parasympathetic from like the environmental toxins, the food sensitivities, the gut infections, all of that. So it's interesting and, attempt to walk the talk. And attempt to walk the talk myself too, where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to tell someone to change their diet and I'm over here eating Twinkies or something. So and it's not about suffering, right? I look at all the stuff I used to eat, that brown stuff on a plate. I'm like, junk. Like I eat awesome food. Like, what do you eat? I'm like, what do you eat? Let's talk about the emotional aspect of POI. So similar to me, I locked that stuff up tight and was like, I'm fine, I'm okay. And then, then my health just got worse. And I'm like, I'm not a huge, like, I will ask for help if I need it, but I didn't have parents like swooping in to help me when the kids were young. That's just, my parents are more like, they'll be there if I specifically ask them. But, so there wasn't a lot of, I guess, when you have a young baby and things like that I didn't have a lot of support there. And then going through this diagnosis, like at that point at 28, I have a group of like close 8 girlfriends. I swear to God, they were like, I don't know, 80% of them were pregnant. Like everyone was like, I'm announcing and they're having their second and their third and everybody's pregnant. I was like, oh, okay. And I was over here, trying to figure out my donor. Like, when you look back,
I know,
talk about insanity, like what, and
trauma.
It is trauma, right? And I'm this planner. So I was like planning out the whole thing. I'm like, okay, if that didn't work, then I do this. And then I was I always had like a backup plan and for that one and over here. And then, but never looking at my health. Didn't look at the health one time because I thought I had great health.
Yeah. And your fertility docs don't really bring that up, right?
No.
They don't say, well, hey, maybe you should look at, switching this up. And, so, I mean, you don't know what you don't know. But definitely the trauma that goes along with that first diagnosis, that first, sit down with the doctor. Mm-hmm. Mine was face to face, but I hear a lot of people, it's just news given over the phone. I mean, I just can't think of anything, more horrific than that. So there was a lot of trauma associated with that conversation. And then obviously when you're thinking about, the long-term impact of your health with that diagnosis, because obviously, you're told all those things like bones are going to disintegrate and, you're not going to be able to sleep and, you're going to have these horrendous hot flashes. And so it's just trauma after trauma. And then going through the IVF and either, not having a successful implantation or having a miscarriage, more trauma. And then, my first birth was really traumatic, a hospital birth. And so that's more trauma. And then there's breastfeeding issues, and that's, more emotional trauma. Yeah. It's just compounded and compounded. And, I've done a lot of work like you with the energy work and really not, really doing modalities to try and bring all that up and deal with it, even if it's really ugly and hard to deal with. Me being able to have this conversation with you right now with not breaking down is really testament of how much work that I have done, since my diagnosis. And that's, a long time as well, was that 14 odd years. So it's taken time. And I think people, fellow women with POI need to just cut themselves some slack and just understand that it is a really traumatic situation. It's a really difficult situation that not a lot of people around you will understand. And you've got to find that practitioner that you resonate with and the type of modality that you resonate with to do the work, because it is so worth it. Because, when you get in the mix of parenthood and just life, other stuff's going to be thrown in your path. So you really need to be able to deal with those situations, not from that place of trauma still. Otherwise, you're just going to end up a basket case.
Yeah, it's so key to like when I was going through this, there was no one. I didn't have anyone to talk to about this. And, I think support with someone else that's, no one can walk in your exact shoes, but at least having a somewhat idea of what it's like with this diagnosis is key. And that's why someone on the fertility, if you haven't been on the fertility journey, it's hard to explain that. Yeah, you feel triggered when your best friend announces her pregnancy, if you go to a baby shower, when you're around children, all these things. Even like I'm doing a whole series on faith, in different faiths, and going to like the temple or the synagogue or the mosque, whatever it may be. There's children and things there, so that's triggering as well. And then you separate yourself from what might give you some peace during this time. So it really impacts all aspects of your life, and depending on everyone deals with it differently. I was like beat my head against the wall, kind of like hammer away, until I had TMJ. My mouth was like wired shut. I was like, what the heck?
Yes.
There's some tension. So, it's interesting to be able to, just to see how it's manifesting in your body. Right. And why did I have my shoulders at my ears all the time? It was like, I'm so stressed out. And then in a job,
my stress still lives in my shoulders.
Yeah.
Because you become more in tune with your body, then you go, okay, I need to go and, talk to someone or have a hot bath, or what is going on, what has triggered me to get into this state, so that, you can start to really unpack it a bit and work through it and not let it bottle up. Because, when you're on that healing journey, like, you're always going to have those sensitivities, and it's not going to take much for us to have that inflammation flare up now that there is that weakness. So we have to be even more mindful of doing that work.
It's true. I got myself a good chiropractor, so that got rid of those shoulder issues. And then I also, like, I know if I'm out of a lot, if I'm cranky with people, and usually it's your closest family members. If I'm cranky, then I'm like, oh, well, that's on me. I haven't done what I need to do to help myself. I'm reading a book called Burnout right now, and they were doing the research for the book. And when they asked all sorts of women, what's burnout? No one said, oh, I don't know what that is. Everyone said, oh, burnout. Yeah. And they're talking about human giver syndrome, where we just give as women, particularly.
Chronic people pleaser.
Yeah, to everyone. And then we're like, oh, wait, me, sleep, or the basic foundations, you're eating your food in the car as you're rushing down to wherever you're going. Things have changed a little bit as we're, many of us are staying at home and working, but it's just to be able to look at some of those things and get in tune with your body and kind of like, wait a minute, where are we off, and how do we ask for support?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really understanding, where that systemic inflammation originates from, and the whole sympathetic versus parasympathetic situation, and wherever possible we need to be getting that oxytocin pumping, because when that oxytocin's high, that the cortisol can't be. And most of the time we don't even think about what makes us happy, what brings us joy, doing those self-care rituals to bring that joy and happiness. So then we're in this constant state of running away from the tiger, and the cortisol is through the roof, and there's no good health that can come in those situations. And that's something that was never explained to me. And I'd been to many practitioners, many integrative doctors, and just didn't really paint that picture about how integral getting that cortisol down as much as possible. There are going to be moments where, even excitement can be, can have your cortisol pumping, but just really understanding, right, how can I switch that off? How can I get back into that rest and digest?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that was a big part of the healing journey for me, is really working out, what can I do to get into that oxytocin state as much as possible? Absolutely.
Castor oil packs are good for that too. Just helps to get right in there. They're actually, I interviewed the woman, Dr. Marisol, and she's like, you and your partner, you wear that castor oil pack. So this one, like, you tie it around your back, your waist. You can go to bed with the thing on. And she's like, but it gives oxytocin. So when you can wear it when you're making love. I'm like, there you go.
Fabulous. Double dose.
Visual. Okay.
Do what you got to do, right?
That's right. And so what do you wish you knew when you were diagnosed with POI or POF?
Like not necessarily taking that first diagnosis, like getting some other opinions, and and I wasn't really offered the counselling side as well, to really be able to process that trauma. Even when I was going through the IVF, I mean, you had counselling to sort of, like, it was mandatory if you're going to have donor eggs, and the donor has to have the counselling as well. But it was never really about my own personal situation, emotional, physical situation. It was just about, having a donor egg conceived child. So I think, if I had have gotten in a bit earlier with, working through the grief, I think that, perhaps the IVF journey would have been a little bit, smoother, because I was still in that fight or flight, pretty much the whole way through, because I wasn't really dealing with the trauma of it all. So definitely, talking to someone that you resonate with, that can really give you the tools to work through that grief and that trauma. And I wish someone had sat me down and explained inflammation in the body, and when your body's in a state of chronic inflammation, there's no way that any baby making is going to be happening. Your body is signaling that it's still running away from that tiger, and it's not in that, that space to want to procreate, just to have a real understanding of inflammation and, and possibly an underlying autoimmune condition. I think that would have really spurred spurred me on to go down a different path with the approach that I was taking to try and reverse the diagnosis.
May I ask about the autoimmune? Did you discover anything on that for you, or you don't have to share if you want?
Yeah, look, nothing's come up on a blood test, but as you are more than aware, that there are so many autoimmune related conditions that don't come up on a blood test.
Mm-hmm.
So I still feel in my heart of hearts that there is an underlying autoimmune issue, but it hasn't manifested in, a blood test saying, that I've got fibro or, some other autoimmune condition that would relate back to that.
Yeah, a fifth of all POI cases have an autoimmunity factor with it. And then even is POI itself autoimmune?
Yes.
Stuff, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely for me with the, similar to you, I had the mandatory counseling, but no one really actually counseled me about this diagnosis and what that really meant. And, I was barreling towards my goal of having my child and didn't really think of how that affected me and the trauma associated with it. And not until years later being able to deal with that. And then the whole gut infections, food sensitivities, the autoimmune component, looking at your, the health of your mom and dad and your grandparents, and then sort of, all that kind of genetic piece being handed down to you. And it's sort of interesting where, some of that piece where it's just no one even looks at it. Like no one told me there was issues around food sensitivities, and we see that non-celiac gluten sensitivity. No one told me that, oh wait, I have all these gut infections and that would then impact my ovaries. Who knew? But your gut. I was interviewed as part of my team. We have an OBGYN, and she's triple board certified in obstetrics and gynecology, menopause, and functional medicine. And she was just talking about she doesn't do it anymore, but she used to do a lot of surgeries. And then like with the small intestine, the large intestine, they all sit on top of like the pelvic cavity, and there's no separation. And so all that, the inflammation in your gut then impacting your ovaries, which I'm like,
absolutely.
Okay, that's a good visual, because sometimes people are like, I don't really know why that would, why do I need to address the parasite or the fungal infection or the bacteria when I have premature ovarian insufficiency or low AMH or high FSH. So that stuff is key, the microbiome of the gut. Also
100%.
Vaginal microbiome as well. Yeah.
And ensuring that there's a good, healthy balance of those bugs in there as well. I mean, that isn't really even addressed. And it was, it wasn't something that I addressed, post-diagnosis and understanding the damage of hormonal birth control to our gut microbiome. And just recently, 2 years ago, I had a hemoreview, like blood hemorrhage through a naturopath, and it discovered parasites, candida, and I had no idea. So all of those things can definitely, and leaky gut, so could all have been a contributing factor. And I had adrenal fatigue, like my adrenals were absolutely kaput. So, and that was discovered through one of the integrative doctors that I came across, probably was circa 2008, 2009. And I also think that was a big contributing factor to the miscarriages. I didn't realise that any progesterone that my body was then getting through the pessaries to support a pregnancy was actually just being converted into cortisol and wasn't leaving anything for the pregnancy. So my integrative doctor didn't even pick that up until the third miscarriage. So, and then at that point, that's when, I ended up going on cortisone purely to stop that progesterone wasting and to support that pregnancy. And that was the trick for Zoe's cycle. And then when I went to try, for Levi, I went on the progesterone in oil to sort of, bypass that because, the pessaries just weren't doing the job. So that's another thing in the mix is, those underlying conditions can also contribute to those hormone therapies. And it's just something to think about before going into it because, when you're going into these cycles, they kind of it's like a one size fits all. And then let's see where the wheels fall off. And, you know, that's an expensive and heartbreaking approach.
Absolutely. It's like the one size fits all approach, right? And it's like, I don't know. That's why
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. You know, it may work for some people, but then, we see the people similar to you that it hasn't worked, where we've been through, failed donor cycles, failed IVFs, failed IVFs, failed IUIs, failed IVFs. And the financial and the emotional heartbreak of that is, for some people, it is just devastating to even see a path forward when a well-meaning RE may have told you, sorry, this is your only path. This is, we can't help you. Your AMH is too low. Your FSH is too high. This is where you need to go. And that's why it's important to be your own advocate. And we really, educate women and couples to know, like, there is hope. We are helping people getting pregnant naturally or getting pregnant with their own eggs, at the clinic with this diagnosis. And I really was hesitant in the beginning to actually help this group of women because I was like, I don't know if I can do it. So I assembled a team to really look at the whole things because this diagnosis is one where people are like, some people won't even touch it, right? Clinics are like, oh boy, that'll like mess with our stats and stuff. But it is, and typically it's younger women where it comes, like you and I, where we had it younger and then those health issues and things like that. So bottom line, when you take that targeted functional approach, there's things you can do to optimize your health and, improve your chances of pregnancy success. And the trauma piece of this is key, like being able to address that piece, because we can do the perfect diet and the supplements and address the gut infections. But if you haven't addressed that piece, there's just a missing link.
Absolutely. It has to be a holistic approach, doesn't it? Like you just have to, think of the mental and emotional aspect as well and dovetail that with the physical for sure. And, when you think about, what we know now is preconception is 1 to 2 years.
Yeah.
So if women with POI just even took that approach, it'd be interesting to see, and obviously working with, a functional practitioner like yourself, that it'd be interesting for them to have that breathing space to like, well, hang on a minute. It's actually 1 to 2 years for your body to actually get into a happy baby state. So I need to give myself some time. Whereas, we're given this diagnosis and we think, well, okay, that's the only answer. And we just barrel through and we haven't even thought about the preconception period. And, the REs don't tell you about that either because you're not using your own eggs. So it doesn't matter. But it so does. I mean, it's, the eggs are, of course, important, but it's just a piece of the puzzle. Like you've still got have that, really nourishing womb space and all over physical health to nurture that pregnancy and, have a healthy baby.
Yeah. 20 years later, like my daughter's 20, that like the approach really hasn't changed that much. Now you can have, the ovarian rejuvenation and some other different treatments, but really it's the same thing saying, sorry, you either better rush right now to the clinic and get this going. Or, sorry, we can't help you with donor eggs, which what we know is not the case. I'll ask this last question. So what would you tell someone now who was diagnosed with, POI or POF?
Your body hasn't failed you. I see that, I hear that time and time again, and they're beating up on themselves and they're so hard and, why does my body hate me? And your body hasn't failed you. Our environment, our society, the information that we've been given about what healthy looks like, it's not your fault. That's what I want to say.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. And, when you look at those different stressors on your body and be able to, to optimize those and to know that there can be biochemical issues with, thyroid, with the sensitivities, blood sugar imbalance. We see that all the time. And then the mental emotional side of this. And so that mind, body, spirit, and really see where you, like in times of stress, where do you default to? Is it like, it was like complete and utter impatience which is something I literally am like, I've talked about this before, like my dad is super impatient and I sort of took on that impatience. And that's just the impatience, like the comparison, oh my goodness, that stuff for me. I literally had this vision of banging my head against the wall. It went on for years and years and years. I'm like banging. Yes. And now I'm like, stop this nonsense. Like, and then being able to really help work through my stuff. Right. And
stop comparing. Because I think a lot of that is the comparison, like, oh, my friend, her husband just has to look at her and she falls pregnant and she eats like this and she drinks like that and blah, 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 blah. We are such unique individuals. And, as you were saying before, like the family genetics, I mean, that all comes into play. We just don't know what the triggers are and why things go awry. And I think there can be lots of factors together. And I think that was it for me, being, the way that I was eating, the stressful jobs, the hormonal birth control. I don't think it was just one thing, but we've got to stop that comparisonitis as well and just focus on ourselves and our own healing journey, and just to really, even though it can be hard in the moment, but we really just need to love on ourselves and tell our bodies that it's okay. We love it. We're not giving up on it. And we are open to hearing what it has to say, what it has to tell us, because that's all it's trying to do. It's just trying to communicate with us. Absolutely. And we're not listening. And so it screams at us.
That's right. Exactly. It screams the forward disease, right? Where you whisper, Sarah, slow down. No, I will keep going. And then then it's sort of the disease begins to happen. So definitely things to do to reverse. And so do you have any resources you recommend? Obviously we're going to recommend your, I'll talk about this in a minute, but the 6 things I wish I'd known about POI, but any other resources that you're coming to mind that you're loving right now?
Look, I mean, I just love everything that you do and your podcast. There's so much great information there. And there's, quite a few well-known practitioners in the space now as well, like, Kayla Smith and the work that she's doing with her podcast. We've got, Amy Raup and Jolene Brighton and, Lara Bryden. Like there's just so many fantastic practitioners out there. And I just think it's important for us to kind of explore everything, and then whoever you resonate with to take it further and work with them or take on board what they have to say, and empower yourself to take your health into your own hands.
Great. Yeah, I've had Dr. Jolene Brighton and Dr. Laura Biden. Is it Biden or Brighton?
Brighton, I think.
Or Bookie or somewhere on the podcast as well. So you can definitely check that out. And so let's talk about the 6 things I wish I'd known about POI. And they can get that. I'll have the link in the show notes, but what can they expect with that? Yeah.
So it's just really, I guess, recapping a bit of my journey and some of the things that wasn't really discussed in depth with me, about the possible food sensitivities, environmental factors, what birth control. I mean, I had no idea what the birth control pill was actually doing to my body, the stress factor as well with adrenal fatigue. So it's just, all of those sort of the pieces of the puzzle my puzzle that I think contributed to my situation.
Nice. So we'll have the link in the show notes for that. Any final thoughts here, Vicki?
Just thank you so much for the opportunity to tell my story and to let other POI women know that they're not alone, or anyone having fertility issues, hormone issues. There is the right support person out there for you and the right path for you to go down. And sometimes that can take a little bit of digging, but, it is worth doing the investigation and empowering yourself.
Love it. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your words of wisdom on this and sharing your story. I know it's, we share our stories many times, but it's for people to not struggle like we did, and hopefully get something that they can kind of say, wait a minute, I can look at this a little differently, and learn to be your own advocate, which is key. So thanks.
100%. My pleasure. Thank you.
I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 4 spots available per month to work with us. I would like to invite you and your partner to a Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery Call. And this call is for you if you meet at least one of these criteria. You've been trying to get pregnant for at least 2 years. You've been through at least one failed IUI or IVF. This calls for action takers. If you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. If you're seriously considering working with us, go to FabFertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. That's FabFertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. You may be taking supplements that instead of optimizing your fertility, may be harming it. That's why we recommend professional grade supplements without harmful dyes, fillers, or top allergens. Simply go to FabFertile Store, that's F-A-B Fertile Store.com to receive a 15% discount on our basic supplement recommendations for preconception health. That's FabFertileStore.com. The Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, including show notes and links, provides information with respect to healthy living, nutrition, lab testing, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without representation or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice and always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.